stands for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, with ANZAC Day being one of Australia and New Zealand's most important national commemorative occasions. Every 25th of April for the past 100 years, ANZAC Day has been observed in Australia and New Zealand.
It marks the anniversary of the first major military action fought by Australian and New Zealand forces during the First World War, and is the day on which we remember all Australians who served in war and on operational service, past and present.
In 2020, we are unable to commemorate ANZAC Day in the usual way in Australia and New Zealand, or across the world in places like ANZAC Cove in Turkey, or at the Australian National Memorial in Villers-Bretonneux, France.
But we will continue to pay tribute to the ANZACs and all current and former members of the Australian and New Zealand Defence Forces by taking time to reflect on their sacrifice and honour their memory through this presentation today.
Bentley Park College has a proud history of developing the ANZAC Spirit through the primary and secondary ceremonies in the lead up to ANZAC Day. Students march and the college band and choir perform at the Edmonton RSL Service on ANZAC Day, the 25th of April each year. To acknowledge the sense of field and open space often associated with battle, primary ANZAC ceremonies are conducted on the lawn between the hill and the multi-purpose area. This allows classes to place handmade poppies on display on the grassed area. Secondary ceremonies are held in the student centre, and a striking feature is the presence of catapult party, which forms a guard made up of students who are Defence Force cadets. At both ceremonies, as well as the Edmonton Community Ceremony, the college band and the primary choir perform the national anthems of Advance Australia Fair and God Defend New Zealand, the hymn Abide With Me, and soloists sound the last post on the rails. The poem In Flanders Fields is recited by a student or staff member, and there is a laying of wreaths. In secondary, a guest speaker from the local 51st Battalion is usually in attendance, who also recites the Ode to the Fallen. The college chaplain says a prayer, and acknowledgement of country is delivered.
And this is where we begin our 2020 ANZAC commemoration. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Bentley Park College sits, the Gimwai Wallabara clan of the Indingi Nation. The traditional lands of the Gimwai Wallabara people extend south of the Barron River to the Rites Creek south of Edmonton, west into the ranges behind Cairns and east to the Trinity Inlet, to the adjacent waters of the Outer Great Barrier Reef. We would like to pay our respects to the elders from the past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Indigenous Australia. We would also like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a long and proud but often little known history of contributing significantly to the Australia's military efforts. We recognise the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have served in every conflict and commitment involving Australian defence groups from 1880 to present day, including both World Wars and intervals of peace since the Second World War. For this, we honour their service.
On the 25th of April 1915, Australian and New Zealand soldiers formed part of the Allied expedition that set out to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in the European part of Turkey. This became known as ANZACs, and the pride they took in that name continues to this day. World War I, which occurred between 1914 and 1918, ended at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. When Germany signed an armistice agreement for peace that had been prepared by Britain and France. With the coming of the Second World War that occurred between 1939 and 1945, ANZAC Day also served to commemorate the lives of Australians and New Zealanders who died in that war. Today, the meaning of ANZAC Day includes the remembrance of all Australians and New Zealanders lost in military operations.
On this ANZAC Day, we thank and recognise those who served in the First and Second World Wars. Korea, Malaya, Vietnam, and more recently Cambodia, Somalia, Rwanda and the Persian Gulf, Solomon Islands, Timor-Leste, Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as those who are serving today. We do not celebrate or glorify war, but rather remember those who have served our country during conflict and crisis. We remember too those men and women who served on the home front, supplying material and moral strength to our fighting forces, for theirs was no less a service to Australia. On ANZAC Day, we salute not only the spirit of the Anzacs, but in paying tribute to all current and former members of the Australian Defence Force, those lost in training on operations, the wounded, injured and ill. We take the opportunity to dedicate ourselves to striving for our country, as they did, and upholding their finest qualities of courage, commitment, endurance and mateship.
The ode is taken from the poem For the Fallen by English poet and writer Lawrence Binyon, and was first published in 1914. In ceremonies of remembrance, the reading of the fourth verse of the poem is a tradition. After the poem is read, it is tradition to repeat the last line together as a response. We will remember them. After the ode, it is tradition for the last post to be sounded, followed by 2 minutes of silence. For younger children, 1 minute is usually observed. The end of the silence is signaled by the call of Lest We Forget, and cues the catapult party to attention for the rouse.
They shall grow not old, as we are left to grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
In Flanders Fields, a war poem written by Canadian physician Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae during the First World War. references the red poppies that grew over the graves of the fallen soldiers, with remembrance poppies now becoming the world's most recognised memorial symbols for soldiers who have died in conflict.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours, hold it high, if ye break the faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
spirit of ANZAC, with its qualities of courage, friendship and sacrifice, continue to have meaning and relevance for our sense of national identity, and we draw on this strength at this time, lest we forget.
Lest we forget.